We do have enough people now. We've got you, Mr. Thorpe, Mr. Como, and Miss Brumman so far.
Okay.
And we have enough people as long as we're not dealing with Mark's application, which actually is first on the agenda. So we'd have to. We have enough people for the second one anyway. The wind development.
Okay. I think Chris Delaney, didn't he say he was coming?
Yeah,
and Brett Perkins said he was coming.
As well as Breck Perkins.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you want to do? Just what makes sense to wait for them or not?
Well, let's see.
It's 6:05.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it makes sense to go to the wind development application.
We're available to do that, Keith, if it helps the commission.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Well, why not, right? Okay.
Let's get it going.
So I'll call the meeting to order, and the ADRB 2006 application, we've, I believe, met once and reviewed, and we had review comments, but just for brevity, maybe the applicant could address the comments we made and how they had responded to them. It's clear that they did respond to a variety of them. So with that, please start your presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chairman McKinley. This is, for the record, this is Bill Sweeney. I'm a partner and an attorney at the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London. And I am local counsel for Wind Development Company, which is the applicant and the developer behind the historic Campbell Grain Mill redevelopment project in Pawcatuck. I know most of you were here last month. I don't think Mr. Thorpe was here, but we did appear before the board last month with architectural and landscape design plans for the project. And the ADRB was gracious enough to provide some comments specifically on the architecture to of the project. And those comments were distributed in a report to the Planning and Zoning Commission the following night, in fact, for our public hearing. And we did obtain approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is an 830G project. It's an affordable housing project. And those of you who have dealt with these types of projects know that architecture and landscaping is really not within the purview of the P&Z Commission in their decision-making process. But the P&Z Commission did ask us to see what we could do to incorporate the comments of the ADRB into our design plans as in a show of goodwill, in which we had already intended to do. So tonight, what we're going to do is show you how we've responded to the comments that were provided at last month's meeting. As I said last month, we're here as a courtesy tonight. The project is approved, but we want to make sure that we react in a meaningful way to the what we thought was, quite frankly, very constructive comments that we received from this board. Wind Development is going to be holding on to this property too. They want to be a good corporate citizen. And so with that, I do just want to introduce, if you don't remember, Matt Rabania from Wind Development is here with me tonight. Adam Stein as well from Wind Development. And we have Jay Szymanski and Paul Humphreys, who are architects. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jay. Jay's got a little bit of some PowerPoint, I think, slides or some images to share with you. And I don't know if he needs to be given an ability to share. Terrific. All right, so I'll give it over to Jay, and we'll try to run through this in a timely fashion for you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Thank you all for taking the time tonight. We'll go through a brief presentation, and then we'll take any questions you might have. So just Just by way of reminder of the comments that we got last time, this was when we met on September 14th. There were 6 main topics, and some of them overlap a little bit, but we'll just go through them quickly. Number 1, there was a recommendation to use some brick material in accordance with our historic sort of mill reference that we were using for a design inspiration. Number 2, recommend introduction of simple window trim and cornice. Number 3, the board felt the design needed more work to avoid an institutional character. Number 4, there was a request for building cross sections to better understand how the site and the grading was working on the site. Number 5, there's a recommendation for further study of the entry facade to provide pedestrian scale and aesthetic. And again, the idea of introduction of some brick at that level. And then finally, number 6, there was a recommendation to study the roof line and potentially add some variation along that roof line, especially where mechanicals are located, and add some articulation again at the entry facade. So again, there's some overlapping there. But in general, we address each of these comments in one way or another. For the most part, the floor plans didn't change all that much. This first sheet is the garage level plan on the bottom, the entry lobby. The top plan is level 1, which is the first residential level above the garage. Again, not much has really changed there. These two, level 2 on the bottom and level 3 on the top. The change here that you can really see is there was some discussion of increasing the depth of some of these vertical recesses that we had. So this stair was actually pushed back 3 or 4 feet to make this a deeper recess to break that facade a little bit more. And these 2 vertical recesses were pushed back. These actually fall in residential units, so we couldn't take too much space out of that, but we did push this back to make that recess a little bit more meaningful. This plan on the bottom is the 4th floor. Again, you can see those recesses here, but nothing else has really changed. And then the roof level. And again, no changes there on the roof. So this is the first sort of rendering that shows all the exterior materials. The big change here was the introduction of some brick at the ground floor, and also brick that extends up into this, which is the elevator tower. This was the recess that we talked about at the stair that provides some more relief on the facade, provides some additional shadow there. Introduction of some green panels, some green screen panels here to soften this garage facade. The roof line, we looked at that. We actually lowered the roof on some of these masses. So this piece, these 2 pieces at the end were lowered. And the cornice was actually beefed up on this middle sort of entry mass and also the end mass. And a subtle angle was added to this end piece on that cornice. We did change a little bit more materials. There was metal panel previously. The whole bottom was metal panel, as well as this vertical piece. Again, the brick was changed at the base, but we also removed the metal panel here and replaced that with a fiber cement panel, which is similar to all of these recesses. The brick that we're proposing is essentially a thin brick material, so it's not a full thickness of brick. So it's a little bit more economical. So we have 2 different colors of brick. We have a field color, which is a sort of more traditional mill aesthetic, sort of orange brick. But then we do have some accent bands that run through it, fairly subtle, but that would be a darker sort of brown. This is the end view, and the change here, you can see it on the base, change to brick, and also the green screen panels here. This recess was also a metal panel slot before, and it's been changed again to the fiber cement panel. So there's a request for cross sections through the site. So we did cut 3 sections through the building. This first one on the lower right is actually through the garage entry. So you have the garage ramp here, and 4 levels of residential above that. You can see on the back side where the grade comes up. This is where the grade is highest. So this residential unit is actually below grade, and we talked about this a little bit last time, but we have a retaining wall here that provides some outdoor space that's private to this unit, but also allows light and air. The next section, labeled Section B here, is through the residential lobby. So you can see how the lobby works in relation to the garage. The garage is up a couple feet from the lobby elevation, and then 4 levels of residential above that. And then finally on the top left, this is a section down closest to the water through the amenity space. So this is the residential amenity space in orange, and then residential units around that in blue. Again, the garage below that. You can see here where we added that green screen along the garage facade, which was otherwise a blank facade in the previous version. We have a series of before and after images. So on the top are the previous design, and then the bottom is the current design. So these are the 2 end elevations. So on the top left is the water side previous design, and below that is the corresponding new version of that same elevation. So you can see here that the change that I mentioned from metal panel to fiber cement panel in this vertical recess, and then you can see the brick on the base here. We also lowered all of these masses to some extent, a couple feet. You can see how tall the base was before. We brought all of that down a few feet. You can see here that it's a sort of lower scale. These two are, again, the previous and current on the bottom of the opposite end, so the end facing town. Again, the biggest difference here is the metal panel on the base has been replaced with brick on the bottom here. And again, that mass, this whole mass has been dropped a bit. So, for example, you can see the dimension at the bottom of this sort of white recess at the top. You compare that to what we have here, so they're roughly equal now, whereas before it was much bigger on the top and smaller on the bottom. And the effect of that was really creating a much higher base. So bringing that all down makes this a much more pedestrian-friendly scale. Go back one. So again, this is a comparison of the line elevation. On the top is the previous design, on the bottom is our current design. There's a number of changes here in this facade. The biggest one, I think, is the change from metal panel to brick. So this whole base is now clad in brick, along with this tower element that really signifies the entry to the building. It's right adjacent to the entry lobby, which is here. We mentioned making this recess deeper, changing that from metal panel to fiber cement. The cornices were beefed up a bit, so you can see this cornice is much heavier than it was before. And this cornice, again, added a subtle angle there to add some motion to the end of the building. And then the other pieces, these 3 were actually lowered. So they were brought down a bit. You can see that how there was a sort of heavy forehead here on the top of the building, whereas that's been reduced quite a bit. And you can see the dimension from grade up to the bottom of that residential piece, and here that's been reduced. Similarly, the height of the lobby canopy has also been reduced. So all of that scale on the ground level we feel is much more comfortable dropping that down. And also softening that entry with the green panels. We also were able to add a couple windows in the garage. This was the elevator lobby inside the garage, so we did have an opportunity to add some windows there, and we did that. Again, more of a 3D view of the before and after, the previous on the top and the current on the bottom. And this approach really got the most discussion last time. really being the first thing you see as you enter the site, where previously this was a very high metal facade, a blank metal facade. So we brought that down, added the brick, and then softened it with the green screen. Here are those windows that I mentioned that were added into the garage lobby. Again, in this view, you can see how that pushing this stair back adds some depth to the facade and breaks it up a little bit more than we had previously. And the last slide is just a landscape plan. We don't have our landscape architect with us today, but the change really is this sidewalk was reduced in width a little bit so that we can get planting up against the building here. So not only do we have those green screen panels, but we also had at grade, we added quite a bit of plantings there to soften that whole edge and make this whole pedestrian entry a little bit more friendly. So that's where we are. Those are the changes that we made. And like I said, I think we hit each of the comments to some extent. There was one more actually. There was a question or a comment on adding some detail in the windows. And we intentionally kept the windows very simple. So they are set back. So there's a recess of about 3 inches from the window frame to the adjacent field. So we intentionally wanted this to be a very clean facade without window trim. And we originally had this solid panel next to each one of them. So we did add one little level of detail by adding some a joint in that panel that coincides with the horizontal molding. Again, it just adds another level of detail around those windows without going to the level of adding window trim, which we didn't feel was appropriate. That's about where we are. I think I've covered all of the comments, again, in one way or another, and some of them are overlapping. I think we hit all 6. And with that, if you have any questions or comments, we'd be happy to take them.
All right, thank you, Jay. I think it was Jay, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Are there, back to the board, are there comments? This is Michael, by the way. Sorry, I didn't say that. How would you know? Anyway, comments?
This is Chris. I just wanted to say thank you for coming back. I appreciate the chance to actually see it and review it, and appreciate the additional detailing that you've gone ahead with in the interim. I think the brick is successful in sort of bringing down that the scale and making it a more approachable facade at that level. And I think it's gone a long way to helping that along. And I also appreciate the green addition at the base structure. Tell me a little bit about those green screen panels. What are they actually? I don't see a spec here.
So what it is, this is actually a photo. So essentially, it's a wire cage that's maybe 3 inches deep. So it's a panel. So it's 4 feet wide, about 12 feet high, and 3 inches deep. That's essentially a cage that allows plant material to grow up into that.
But is the intent that the plant material would be living?
Yes.
Got it. We're not talking synthetic.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
This is Jenny. I like the brick on the elevator shaft going all the way to the top. I think that adds some good authenticity, to it, and like all your improvements. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
further comments?
Yeah, I'll comment since I had the comment. This is Leslie Driscoll. Since I had the comment about adding brick to the facade at the last meeting. So I do like the way you've incorporated brick into this and brought the, lowered the ground level heights by lowering that siding, the fiberboard siding, and angling that section that's closest to us here, the roof line of that. So those proportions feel a lot better to me. It just kind of softens the building. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
We really think it's a superior product, and we certainly appreciate all the comments that the board made, and we certainly did our best to try to incorporate them to the extent we could. So again, thank you for your input.
You're welcome. So any further comments? Is Mark Camo there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think they're all contributing changes to the facades compared to what was presented last time. Love the green screen. And the cornice treatments and the elevation changes of the floors. I think it's all very good responses. And it, I think it's good to go.
Okay. All right. Then without further ado, is there a motion that can be made?
I would move that the board approve the amended application as presented tonight.
I'll second. Mark.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I would like to just abstain just because I still think the density is too much height. That's okay.
Okay. Of course, we can't really, it's not in our purview, but
Right.
that's certainly a real issue. So we have a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Okay. So
Four,
we have approved. We have approved the application.
Right, with 4 votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think it was a genuine effort in the circumstances that we know legally was not required, and it took some energy. So, from my opinion, fair play, and thank you.
Have a good rest of your night, and good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Mr. Perkins.
Okay. Well,
Hello?
hello? That's Brack, right? Or is it?
It is Brett, and I'm trying to get on the WebEx right now, so bear with me.
Sure.
Okay. So, but in the meantime, did we have Chris Delaney show up? Or do?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was a little
He's there,
late.
okay.
I had some
All right.
Wi-Fi issues.
Yes. Don't we all? So we can proceed, I believe. We just, for those of you who just tuned in, we just approved the second applicant because we could not, with Mark excluding himself, we would not have had a quorum, I think is the way that worked. And now, so in other words, now we're taking the second application, the automotive service gas station application.
Yeah, I apologize for
All right.
being late. That had anything to do with it.
Okay, so is everyone on now? Is Brett on, or and?
Yeah, it looks like everyone's on now.
Okay, so I'll start then. Keith, is it possible for you to, well, actually, they're in the write-up on the draft. So we have in front of us the points we made at the last meeting. I assume everybody's seen that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 points at the bottom of the page and on the back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we don't have to read those because you can read them yourself. So with that, we'd like the applicant to start the presentation on special use permit and CAM review for change from automotive service gas station to a restaurant, which actually it's not, right? So I'm not sure how that works, but we don't review that anyway. So would the applicant begin, please?
Hi, yes, this is Sergio Cerenzia with Cerenzia and Associates. I'm the project engineer. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
This application has been before you previously, but it was modified. I can't remember if it was since our last meeting, but it has gone from a restaurant to a hotel. So the use has changed, which has changed some of the regulatory requirements and more or less changed the intensity of the use. I'm not sure, just as a matter of housekeeping, I don't know if Mark Como needs to recuse himself from the board before or after my presentation, or how that works, Keith?
Well, it would be helpful just to announce that now.
Okay.
I will be recusing myself from the voting on this application.
Thank you.
Noted.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
So once again, for the applicant, G Development LLC, Sergio Cerenzia, I'm the project engineer, and the application before you was prepared by my office in conjunction with our landscape architect, Elena Pascarella of Landscape Elements, who is also on this WebEx meeting call, and Mark Como, the project architect. I believe I'm not going to go into too much detail because I believe that you've seen this project before. Keith, if it's okay, can I share my screen?
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to bring up the landscape plan. I think you all are familiar with the project area on the corner of Washington Street and Broadway. The proposed building is a 1,700 square foot building footprint on more or less 0.18 acre site. The previous site, as it sits today, is an abandoned gas and service station, and it's being redeveloped into what is now a 5-unit hotel with a resident manager unit, so a total of six hotel rooms. Mr. Como will get into a little bit more detail on the building. Some things have changed with respect to the the site amenities as well as the building to complement more of a hotel, taking in effect your comments from last time. As you can see, the configuration of the site has not dramatically changed. We're still proposing a one-way entrance from Washington Street underneath an elevated building to meet flood code compliance, and then bringing those vehicles through with some parking and out onto Broadway. You'll see in the corners of the site where we will be putting in these bioretention infiltration areas that have been landscaped. We heeded the advice of the Architectural Review Board and focusing on the streetscape and embellishing, some street shrubs and trees, as well as some around the perimeter of the site. And then there'll be a pretty significant landscape feature, which Elena will be going into, the green wall, which we're proposing along the rear of the property to mask the building that's more or less on just off the property line, just to the west. So I'm happy to answer any technical questions, but I would probably turn it over to Elena so that she can go through the finer intricacies of the landscape layout.
Okay, thank you, Sergio. I think many of you are familiar with me. My name is Elena Pascarella. I'm a landscape architect. The company is Landscape Elements, LLC. We presented to the ADRB last year, I believe it was, on the Homewood Suites proposed extended stay hotel and the additional hotel at exit 90. So you're looking at the site plan, but I think, Sergio, can you bring up the elevations, because that might provide a better understanding of how the landscape is complementing the site and really trying to, okay, so this is your east elevation, which is looking along, not Washington Street, Broadway. And you can see in the background that gray lattice, which is the green screen that's proposed. It will be a live green wall. The company we're in conversation with is a company called Live Green. They're out of Michigan, but I've worked with them before on Live Roof. They have Live Wall and Live Roof, so two subsidiaries under one company. And we've used their Live Roof trays on roof gardens at two facilities in Providence. The material is really quality material. And what I liked about it was the fact that we were dealing with a representative at Pride's Corner Farm in Colchester, Connecticut. And so this would work nicely because you're buying local essentially. The material for the structural component of the wall is all fabricated at the Live Green facility, and they, the structure, the lattice structure, the irrigation connections, and the trays that kind of hang onto this structure. But then they ship it all to Pride's Corner Farm, and then Pride's Corner Farm fills it with the topsoil and the plant material that we select. So it's essentially you're buying plants locally. And this view shows you to the right side of that elevation. You're looking at the area that would be one of the infiltration basins. You have a couple of street trees. We're proposing to use Heritage River birch, and then the plant material around the infiltration basin, small shrubs that will tend to keep people out of the infiltration basin itself, things that are good for visibility, because we don't want to block the view for people walking around on the sidewalk. Things that are tolerant. I've also selected plant material that's road and coastal salt tolerant, and also deer proof, because I understand from a friend who lives in downtown Mystic that you now have development happening up along Wistuxet, And I guess the deer are losing their habitat and coming on down and browsing in people's front yards. So, and a sort of unexpected thing for an urban village, but it's happening. To the left side of that elevation, you have the parking area. We have thornless honey locust tree in that area, some dwarf grasses, and then along the property line, we put in a row of horizontal evergreens to kind of screen between the fire station and the hotel site. And if you can go to the next slide, Sergio, that's the south elevation. So you're looking at it from the parking lot. Essentially, you can see the green screen off on the left side. There basically be some ground cover underneath between the screen and the hotel, and we've chosen fastigiate hornbeam. They'll work nicely in that area just to give some vertical element, and one of them would help to provide some shade over the parking area. And the next one, please, should be the north elevation along Washington Street. Yep. And again, to the left side, you can see where that one infiltration basin is on the corner, the two birch trees and a witch hazel, and some other dwarf fountain grasses. And then along the right side, you can see a symbol for the green screen element, although that element's going to be just along the property line, as you saw in the initial elevation. It won't continue up to the corner in Washington Street. There's no need to. The hotel on that side does not have any windows. Guess what we're looking to do is really green the site. You've got something that's very impervious now. We're making it a lot more permeable, really giving the area more curb appeal to help integrate it into the Mystic neighborhood. And I guess I'll open it up. We also provided a plant palette with some images. The infiltration basin will have a variety of herbaceous material that does well in those areas that get wet periodically. It's available through Pride's Corner, not Pride's Corner Farm. It's available through Allen Seed Supply, which is in Exeter, Rhode Island, and I'm sure you could get it from other locations as well. And the lower right shows you the structure, the lattice structure for the green screen, then the trays, how they hang on to it, and then the completed installation. And we're probably looking to use mostly English ivy because the client would like something that's evergreen year round. I guess I'll open it up for questions if anyone has any.
Elena, thank you for the materials. Appreciate the comprehensiveness of the presentation. It's made everything else so much easier to sort of understand. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you put together the design. Just two questions I have for you. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the decision, or you felt the necessity to put those columnar hornbeam between the green wall and the building. That looks like on the plan to be quite a tight space that might even be kind of dark, and I'm wondering what your thought was on that.
It was to get some verticality as you're looking down from the north elevation. You'd have this wall for the hotel, and then you'd have the green screen. Mm-hmm. And it was to try to break up that long corridor look.
Understood. I get concerned about the maintenance on those, because those are going to get quite bulky, and thinking that it might be kind of a lot of work to get in there and keep those checked size-wise. Where I think the locus on the other side you know, there's a lot of room for those to get quite a nice head on them and be effective.
Mhm.
And then the other question I had is the proposal to have 3 trees on the corner and to have two new species introduced there. Wondering what your thought is there. Why not be sort of consistent around the building?
With the honey locust, you mean?
Yes, or go the other way, but honey locust is what I was thinking.
Yeah, we were trying to not have anything that would get as large as the honey locust because you have the Station 1 hotel sign right on that corner.
Well, the thought is it is a tight site and you've got a lot of nice material proposed, but there's a lot of material proposed, and I was thinking if we were a little more consistent, it might sort of ground all of the greenery
Right.
a bit.
Yeah, we could remove those hornbeam if you're you're not comfortable with that element along that west side. You know.
I have to commend you for the amount of greenery that you have got on there. I think that's a good move, and I rarely am arguing for the removal of any, but I think the simplicity is of value here.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look at that. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yep.
And that's it for plant material comments.
I just had a question about the green screen, which I love those. Does that is it freestanding on the property or is it attached to the building next to the property?
It's freestanding. Yes. Okay. And it only goes as far as the building, and then it actually, you can't really see it as well from here. It will turn into the building corner.
Okay.
You see it on the plan better.
It's only anchored to the building on this property owner's side in the corner, the northwest corner.
Yeah, but it's freestanding structurally. I mean, I'm going to have to defer that to the company. Provides information in terms of the weight of the various materials, and then they recommend that a structural engineer, a local structural engineer, look at the entire unit and determine how best it should be anchored.
And the detail that you're showing on your palette shows that it adhered to a masonry wall, so I think that's where your question is coming from.
Yeah, but it will be on the masonry wall at the very corner of the hotel, where it says Station Hotel, that northeast corner.
Yeah.
I'm on a call, Jack.
This is Michael McKinley. I think we can come back to landscape whenever needed, or maybe just after I mention this. But I think it's responsible to mention. I don't know how many of you've seen comments from the public. I saw comments on the Stonington forum. There were well over 100 comments on this particular project based on, I believe, one rendering that was published. So I'd like to ask the members of the board, number one, if they've seen that and how they would react to those comments. And if no one has seen it, then I could quickly summarize what I saw. But I do think that maybe we have some of the public listening tonight. I have no way of knowing. But welcome if you are listening, and I do think it does make good sense to at least discuss that aspect of this project. So with that, I'll turn it over to our board for for any comments, actually.
I read a good percentage of those comments, and I think people have a lot of those comments were knee-jerk reactions to just pick something apart. I think a lot of them just don't want to see any change, and some people were probably some of the same people that have resisted the Thompson building and other architecture that's come into town that's been a little bit different than a cape or, you know, something that's really historically more of a little village feel. There were a lot of people that said they liked it too, though. But they kind of got drowned out by some of the other negativity. And some people commented many times over and over again.
There were some very militant comments that were made about the modernism or their perception of modernism. So it was, but I agree, there were a lot of these things were knee-jerk reactions to any type of change. And when you take the building in context to what it's surrounded by, the Henny Penny and the fire station, and then the CVS and Apple Care, and then the factory or warehouse building behind it, it's surely a major improvement to the area.
Yeah, I agree.
Chris Delaney, I'd like to add that I think Michael points out something important, that it was just one rendering, you know, that everybody was responding to, and I don't think it was even necessarily the best rendering. But I think there's a couple of issues that a lot of the people that were responding, you know, just they don't have the opportunity to hear the presentation and they don't understand the whole picture. I mean, number one, this building's in a flood zone, and you know there's a lot of new guidance or regulation regarding constructing a building in a flood zone. So you know that's a big part of why the building appears the way it does, and that probably confuses some people. I did read the comments. Leslie pointed out that were some mixed comments. There were actually some positive comments. And another thing I think that I like to remind myself is the Architectural Review Board guidance and guidelines does specifically ask architects and designers to create a building that reflects the immediate surrounding area and not necessarily the entire town and maybe a more historic sections of town. And you know, when, as Breck pointed out, there is kind of a variety of architecture in that area. So, you know, I think it's hard to put too much emphasis on what some of those comments were, because they don't really, I think they don't have the opportunity to see the full picture.
Yeah, everybody knows that this is a public meeting too, so they're all welcome to attend. But I think this building next to the Hoxie Fire Station, it just works. You know, when you look at it in context with other things around it.
Keith, can I jump in for just a second and clarify something?
Sure.
I read the comments. Had to turn my phone off. And you know, just as a side note, Andre Palladio started his career at a time when Gothic was all the rave, and he despised Gothic, and he went down the path of a completely different set of proportions and materials and truth in architecture. And at first, it wasn't received well, and then today in architecture school we study Palladio more than we study Gothic architecture. I'm glad you all have the foresight to understand the context of those comments. And I think the best comment is that this is not the best rendering that we put forward. The building has, these panel expressed pilasters, a lot of the white and the black materials that you see. I just want to share a screen here. That the overall imagery that we're looking at is something like this. The modern Connecticut farmhouse with the charcoal standing seam roof and the white envelope materials and black window frames and things like that. And so I don't, these renderings that are asked for by not only this board but other boards, they're hard because you have a computer program that's putting them together and throwing this through. And just as a technical side note, there were a few other things that were mentioned last time. For instance, announcement to the entrance of the building from the street, and where now it's a boutique hotel, it doesn't happen from the street, so we shouldn't announce it from the street. Instead, you'll notice on the north elevation, we have a standing seam metal roof that kind of announces this is where you drive in. I met with the fire marshal about a myriad of issues over the week, and where we have to dispense to the public way. What the fire code wants versus maybe what we as architects want are not always the same thing. So we can't always have the grand announcement, Andre Palladio, entrance to a building. But nonetheless, if we throw in all the elements and to scale and proportions and the form and the space and the order all work with what we think we're trying to accomplish for the client, for the town, I think it all works really well. And so we think we scaled it back to a project that we provide 140% of the parking required on our site, which is a rare thing in downtown Mystic. And we have a client who wants to invest in projects like that.
Thank you, Mark. And Michael, thank you for mentioning that. I did not see the comments section. I missed that whole display. I don't know if Mark, you can share the rendering that they're referring to as part of the imagery, or is that part of our bundle that we received?
Hi, this is Breck Perkins. I think what the majority of the folks were reacting to was the massing of the building and the overall height seemed to be one of the critical issues, and I don't think they completely understood the transparency of the third floor, or that it was mostly pergola and deck more than it was actually enclosed. So I think that needs to be sort of sorted out in the presentation to some degree.
And that image didn't do justice. The landscape material is incomplete there.
Yeah.
This is Keith. For the record, there's no other members of the public on this meeting, although it is being recorded. People could watch it afterwards. Of course, there will be a public hearing before planning and zoning where anyone can speak about these issues.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. This is Michael. Yeah, I think this has a significance that probably goes further than this project, and I think in terms of how we react to this. At least I was kind of struck by the importance of it, and as I'm sure Mark was when he was designing it. And I think it's probably taken a good number of people just by surprise, the general public, and perhaps people that don't know who Palladio is, and also people who frankly could care less. But I think it's a good analogy. But I think people, general public, looking at the rendering, which is, I believe, the correct rendering, Chris, you're asking, I believe, about what one was published. I mean, it's very close to it. It could be different, but at any rate, it was more or less the same perspective. It's kind of, what is it? I mean, it's really simple. What I gathered, and it appeared to more than a few people as stylistically Floridian, which it is actually. I mean, it could be argued that it belonged to other parts of the world, Mediterranean. But at any rate, I think that astounded people, and that as long as we address kind of very simply in our own minds, you know, that why this is contextually appropriate, then, you know, then we sort of have done our duty. And then I think also a variety of those people, it's very interesting, kind of view us as maybe a watered down historic district commission, where we're actually enforcing some sort of historical mandates. And you know, as we all know, frankly, it couldn't be too much further than the truth. And so you know, to me, the test is whether the building has integrity and is true to the intent as presented by the design team and the architect. And, you know, I think we've seen plenty of projects where, you know, that hasn't been true, where it's really fallen apart, and because it's been sort of excused by a brand name, and or even worse, that the project didn't have any intent, right? It was impossible to tell whether it had any integrity or not. So, you know, to me, as an architect, having been around evaluations for a while, it seems to me that would be the standard. And, you know, you can certainly look to buildings in our general environment here that, you know, are far from New England architecture, that are very successful, like Addison Miser's train station in Westerly, which is, although it's not in Connecticut or Stonington, really is part of the architectural environment, or the library there. You know, we're talking about direct Mediterranean, even Floridian influence. So, at any rate, that's my 2 cents worth in overview. But I think the main point there was that if we don't kind of address why we're what our thinking is here, it's just going to be sort of you know, we've just rubber stamped things without any real understanding of its impact on the community. Done.
Thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
This is Jenny, Jenny Brummond. I'm just looking at the ground floor, you know, since that is a point of entry for not only cars but people to go up to the lobby. And I know this doesn't reflect any sort of decoration or whatnot, but I was thinking it would be important to make sure that that ground floor is very presentable, very, very welcoming. You know, and that's not really for us here, but when I look at it, it looks rather, you know, utilitarian, and just for also I'm sure there would be signage for the public to know what to do. You know, you're going to go in, take the stairs or the elevator up. Just thinking about it as that's your first view when you enter the hotel, is this parking area with elevator and stairs. And so my thought would just be to the owners or whatever to make it as lovely as possible. That's it.
Yeah, we plan on using some really avant-garde lighting and other kinds of devices to address those very things. And one thing in terms of Michael mentioned scale. One thing everybody should do is go stand on the sidewalk and look at the service station, and you realize that it's a very small lot, and that this rendering makes the building look gigantic when in fact it can't be, because the lot is only so big. You really get a sense of the lot when you go stand there on the sidewalk and take a look at the breadth of it.
Well, Mark, it's Breck. If I could make a recommendation, I think that with the horizon that you have in the background of the image isn't doing it any kind of justice. And I think if you were to come and shoot from the opposite direction, you would then catch the firehouse, which has some elevation to it in the background, and then it wouldn't look quite so big. But that if you were to go from the opposite direction, I don't know if you have it Revit or you can spin it like that, it might help.
He has another view.
It has something to compare itself to, and it doesn't. I mean, I was thinking about further on down the road, but whatever.
Yeah, because that even diminishes with the focal point the scale of the firehouse, which is a hard thing to do when you're mixing these medias of Photoshop and Revit and things like that. But you're right, it definitely changes the perspective of the scale. And with scale and height, one of the comments last time from the board was they desired to see the third floor even higher, but we can't because we're bouncing up on the ceiling of our maximum height. So I think we've got. I think in the end it'll be articulated much more cleanly and with more contextual elements than what these renderings really show. But you know that. You all know that. You're design professionals.
Thank you, Mark. I think those images do a great deal of help in conveying the sort of aspects that Michael was speaking about in terms of scale and texture that, certainly the elevation and plans just don't convey. I would love to see it fully composed with plant material because I think that's an important element of this composition, and it really helps with the transition of the edges into the neighborhood. Beyond that, I think these images or illustrations are answering many of the questions I had about details on the building. And yeah, it's not a Victorian structure, but I don't think that's what's called for here.
Chris, is there a condition of approval in what you had just said there?
Oh, about simplification of the plant palette. It's a wish. I'd love to see the simplification of that a bit. The honey locust, I think they're doing yeoman's duty with potential for long-term scale. It's just a question about the appropriate choice on that corner, because I understand you were going to have a couple of competing interests for that material. And as I recall, I think there's an overhead power line that's cutting that corner as well. But I think if there were a little less elements on that corner, it would help a great deal in unifying the surround canopy. But as a condition, I don't know what the other members of the board feel about that comment.
Just for clarification, Chris, this is Helena. So you're talking about the northeast corner, at the corner of
Right.
Washington and Broadway. Okay.
Yeah, I believe you mentioned that there are birch and hornbeam, not hornbeam,
Witch hazel.
yeah.
Yeah, we can simplify. Yeah. Okay.
But that would be my only request. Otherwise, I appreciate the thought and consideration that went into the application.
Thanks, Chris. One minor detail, always when you're in design development, it's very seldom that you get actually total coherence between elevations and particularly renderings. But the one small item I noticed in the rendering that's taken from, let's call it the south, maybe it's the southeast, shows the roof at the east elevation, the first level, second level roof, wrapping around the building. This would be to Mark. And in the elevations, the two-dimensional elevations, that's not the case. So,
That's correct, and it would not wrap around. It actually nestles into the corner and would not wrap around.
Okay. So be it. Do we have, with that, do we have any further questions or comments from the board?
I just have a question about the swimming pool. Is it a surface pool? Is that how that's going to work?
Yeah, it's a prepackaged pool, not that large, that will go up on the roof with a spa. That will be a surface pool.
So would it only be 4 feet deep or something like that? Is that what the?
Yeah, it won't be deep at all.
And so it lays on top of the roof structure, and it's not into the below the structure, correct?
Yep. Yep.
That's all I had.
All right, then why don't we put this to the next step, and is there a motion that one of the board members can make?
A motion to accept.
Approve. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. All members in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So the application is approved. Congratulations, design team, and good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark. I'll get some sound effects going on here.
Open playing.
So the only remaining item on my agenda is the approval of the minutes, I believe, of last meeting.
Oh, that's right.
Any issues there?
No.
No issues.
I have
Review
no
of meeting
issues, but I
minutes.
have no voice since I was in absence.
Okay.
Looks good to me. Looks good to me.
Yes. Second. All right, then, is there any other further conversation?
If we could just vote on the approval of the minutes. I think we had
Oh, okay. All in favor of the minutes. Sorry, I thought we okay.
Aye.
Approved. Aye.
Aye.
Your minutes were approved, Keith. Excellent job. You're batting 1,000. My God. Yeah. You know, stenographers make a lot of money. They make hundreds of dollars an hour.
That's true. I want to start doing illustrated minutes where I draw pictures of the building.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do, but you know, that's you know, sometimes I think it'd be better being a stenographer, frankly, and not doing buildings. All right, well, then we'll adjourn. Thank you for this.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.